I've left it at the entrance. Take care of it for a week. What? What did you leave? My selfish sister-in-law, Allie, suddenly called me out of the blue. She said she had put her baby in a tote bag and left it at our front door. I moved yesterday, you know? As soon as she heard my response, Allie started yelling. I'm overseas. Find it now. I rushed to the house we used to live in, but the baby was nowhere to be found. I need to call the police. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, about to discover a horrifying truth. I had married Mike 10 years ago and we had been living together since. We had wanted children but hadn't been blessed with any, and before I knew it, I was 38 years old. Taking advantage of me was something Allie, 5 years my junior, did regularly. Her husband was a CEO, and my husband worked at his company. Using that leverage, it was routine for Allie, who lived just a 10-minute drive from us, to ask me to run errands. Moreover, since she became pregnant, she started demanding more of my time, making me clean her house and cook dinner. Even though I loved helping people, I told my husband she was being too demanding, but he asked me to keep an eye on her for a while longer, saying, I'll talk to her soon. Sorry, but please bear with it for now. He was probably under some pressure from Allie's husband. Thinking so, I would reluctantly go to her house whenever she called. My stomach feels so heavy. Look, Mary. Don't just space out, get the TV remote. What? You mean? What now? Allie was only 3.5 months pregnant. Yet, it seemed like her belly was showing quite a bit. However, she was naturally plump, so I kept my unnecessary comments to myself. Wouldn't it be better for a safe delivery if you moved around a bit? Don't lecture me when you've never been pregnant. This was exactly the case of if I say this, she says that. This child is going to be our heir. What's wrong with taking good care of him? Sitting arrogantly on the couch without breaking her imposing attitude, my nerves gradually wore thin as I was loaded with stress. But when I questioned whether it was even possible to know the gender of the baby at just 3.5 months, she flared up in anger. Your brain is outdated. With today's advanced civilization, we can know the gender right away. Unable to muster the energy to argue with my sister-in-law Allie, I listened to her complaints with dismay. You're just jealous because you can't get pregnant. It's really bad for the baby's prenatal environment. If anything happens to this child, it's gonna be your fault. Eventually, she started using the unborn baby to threaten me. Being around Allie became suffocating, and I continued to rush through errands and return home sighing. When I told my husband upon his return from work, he soothed me with, just hang in there a bit longer, and I continued to live with a heavy heart. The situation was so painful that whenever Allie called, I kept making up excuses to decline. Then Allie complained to my husband that I was being mean to her, leaving me in a tight spot. No matter what I said, Allie wouldn't listen and kept calling repeatedly. When I inevitably answered the phone, she screeched in a piercing voice that resonated deep into my ears. Mary, do you want to jeopardize your brother's position at work? You remember that my husband is the CEO, right? My husband, usually gentle and kind. I didn't want to cause him any trouble, so I had no choice but to go to Allie's place. As time passed, Allie gave birth to a boy a month earlier than expected. And surprisingly, the baby weighed over 9 pounds. I wondered if that was too big for a baby born early. But since I had never been pregnant, I guessed that might be normal. Allie named the boy Sky, and true to form, she called me after being discharged from the hospital to have me take care of the baby. Think of it as practice for motherhood, and do your duty as a nanny properly. You might not be so lucky yourself, though. Although Allie irritated me, I figured she must be going through a lot just after giving birth, so I visited her house whenever she called. Plus, I couldn't resist how adorable the baby was. Sky, you're such a good boy. Grow up strong. Changing diapers for the first time and bathing him didn't feel like a chore at all when I saw his face. However, after 3 months, Allie started dropping the baby off at my house. What's going on? All dressed up? I've got a dinner with people from my husband's work, and I'm tagging along. So, you take care of Sky, okay? As she got healthier, I realized being the wife of a CEO came with its responsibilities, but I diligently took care of the baby. Yet, as time went on, the frequency of Ali leaving Sky with me increased. Counting on you today. Isn't this a bit too much? You're not always accompanying your husband, right? My guy is handling a big business deal, and I'm helping out. You need to pitch in too. Ali, raising her voice, forcefully left the child with me and hurried out. I wonder how useful she can be in that flimsy dress. Despite my doubts, I couldn't just ignore the baby in front of me, so I tended to his needs. But that day was different. When I opened his diaper, Sky had diarrhea. He didn't have a fever and seemed otherwise well, so I kept the room warmer than usual and watched over him. In the evening, when Ali came to pick up Sky, I told her about his condition, and she confronted me loudly. You're so useless. Did you feed Sky something nasty as a spite? I shook my head to indicate no, just as my husband Mike came home. What's all the noise about in the entryway? Oh, brother. I trusted Mary with Sky because I believe in her, and now he's got the runs. Ali, usually harsh with her words, surprisingly spoke in a subdued voice and started crying. I get where Ali is coming from, but Mary has no experience with raising kids. It was chilly today, maybe he got a bit cold. I'll apologize, so please forgive her. My husband defended me, but since I hadn't done anything wrong, I didn't understand why he apologized, and I watched Ali and Sky leave with mixed feelings. As I began preparing dinner feeling down, my husband suddenly became serious and pulled an A4 envelope from his bag. Mary, we need to have a serious talk. Dinner can wait, please sit down. I couldn't believe the words he told me as he spread the documents on the table. And I was completely taken aback since I had never imagined such a thing. However, I realized his determination was firm and unwavering, and I quietly nodded. A week later, as I was unpacking boxes, Ali called. I've left it at your front door. Take care of it for a week. What? What did you leave? Don't play dumb. It's obviously my kid. You've already brought him inside, right? It turned out that since I wasn't home, she had put Sky in a tote bag and hung it on the doorknob. Hearing this, I was shocked and panicked. Wait a minute! We moved yesterday, so we're not going back to that house. Go pick up Sky right now. But Ali said, what? You're kidding again, and wouldn't believe what I was saying. However, when I insisted it was true in a serious tone, she suddenly panicked. It had been 5 hours since she left Sky. And she was currently on an overseas trip, which surprised me even more. It was supposed to be spring, but it was still a chilly day with temperatures not rising much. Go pick up Sky now. Hurry up. Before I could get angry at Ali's attitude, I was too worried about the baby and immediately drove to the house we had moved from. An hour later, I arrived at our old house and checked the front door, but there was no sign of Sky. The tote bag is gone, why? I searched around the yard thoroughly and asked the neighbors, but everyone just said they didn't know anything. No one heard crying? What does that mean? I was about to call the police as there seemed no sign of finding Sky, when I received a call from someone. What? What did you say? I was left speechless by the shocking content of the call. After hanging up, unable to organize my thoughts, I was wandering around when Ali called. He was in the tote bag at the front door, right? Ah, he's nowhere to be found. Seriously? That's bad. If we don't find Sky, my husband might divorce me. It's gonna be your fault. Ali's voice trembled so much over the phone, it was clear she was panicking. When I told her I'd report it to the police and have them look for him, she adamantly refused. That would blow this up into a big deal and my husband would find out. Sky's safety is more important than your image. Sky is just a tool for getting money from my husband. Hearing this, I was appalled by her selfishness. Ignoring my feelings, I could hear Ali talking to someone she was with. After a while, she lamented. This trip's ruined now. Didn't get a flight today, but I'm coming home tomorrow. Don't you dare tell my husband. Call me immediately if you find Sky. I'll do what I can. Satisfied with my response, Ali hung up. The next day, as I waited for Ali at the airport, she appeared arm in arm with a man. Seeing me, she approached with a scowl. Mary! What are you doing here? Did you find Sky? I came to tell you something important. Sky is out of your reach now. It was too late. As I spoke these words, looking down with a sad expression, Ali began to panic. That's a lie. What am I supposed to tell my husband? You're useless. Find a similar baby right now. How could you say that? Are you even a mother? Ali suggested that any baby of the same age could fool her husband. Anger and sadness overwhelmed me, and I couldn't help crying. But I quickly wiped the tears from my cheeks and looked her squarely in the eyes. Instead of looking for a similar child, you should be dealing with this person, I said, as a woman who had been hiding behind me, wearing a deep hood, showed her face. Not just Ali, but the man she was with shuddered visibly. Yes, she was the wife of Ali's lover. Too stunned to move, the man was confronted by his wife. You scum. I'll teach you some manners, as he pleaded weakly, please forgive me. However, there was no chance the wife would forgive her cheating partner, who was told to brace yourself. She slapped him hard across the face back and forth. It stopped passers-by in their tracks. She left the man, who had fallen and was clutching his cheek, and turned to Ali. Ali went pale and blurted out hastily. Please don't misunderstand. We are not in that kind of relationship. What? Mary, stop recording this with your smartphone. Even as Ali tried to deflect, I was holding up my smartphone to capture the moment, and she snapped back at me. But I remained calm. So, how do you explain this? I pulled out from an envelope I had brought with me the email exchanges and cozy photos of Ali and her lover that I had found on social media. Ali snatched them from me and glared fiercely. Snooping around like that is the lowest. How did you even find this guy's wife's contact info? I just happened to know her. What? When I first saw Ali's lover on social media, I thought his face looked familiar. Then I remembered he was the husband of a woman who worked at the salon I frequent. He was also a hairdresser, but while his wife owned several successful salons and was skilled, he hardly worked and was known for fooling around. A typical case of the hairdresser's husband. When I told his wife about Ali's affair trip, she said, I've reached my limit. I'm joining in, and came along with me. Normally gentle and kind, I was honestly shocked to see how terrifying she could be when angry. This playboy hairdresser, dominated by his wife, rubbed his hands together like a fly and repeatedly begged, please don't divorce me. However, she never nodded in agreement, making me feel a strong resolve. Moreover, Sky is the child of your lover, isn't he? What? Don't make baseless claims without proof. But being born a month early and weighing over 8.8 pounds is definitely too big. You've been fudging the weeks, haven't you? I said, pulling out documents from a different envelope. One was a mother-child health handbook. Additionally, documents proving that Ali's husband was not Sky's father. Playing dirty, huh? But if I tear this up, it's like nothing ever happened. Ali said, snatching the DNA test results from my hands and tearing them up, looking smug. I am sure she thought she could get through this, but it did not happen. You should talk directly to the person who gave me these documents. As I turned my smartphone screen towards Ali, her eyes and mouth widened in shock, ready to scream. No wonder she was stunned. On the screen was Ali's husband. I wasn't recording, I was on a video call with Ali's husband. Ali. Lying about going to your parents' place, you really had me fooled. That is, well, you see, what I mean is... Ali stammered, completely thrown off. Standing before her, I spoke slowly. Listen carefully, I'm going to explain everything one by one. A week earlier, her husband, suspecting something from the emails between Ali and her lover, had sent off for a DNA test for Sky. At the same time, he lied to Ali about going on a business trip for a week to monitor her actions. Then, Ali contacted her lover via email and promptly booked an international trip online. Caught up in the excitement, she didn't even think to erase her browsing history. On the day of the trip, Ali put Sky in a tote bag, hung it on the front door of my house, and skipped off to the airport, humming a tune. Her husband, who had been following her, took care of Sky. If he had been left at the door for over 5 hours, who knows what could have happened. What? So, Sky is alive? Yes, he's with him right now. I was about to call the police, unable to find Sky, when I received a call from Ali's husband. Surprised, but wanting more details, I immediately went to his house. Sky was full of energy, flailing his limbs and playing with a rattle. As I listened to the whole story, I remembered how Sky had been born a month early yet weighed over 8.8 pounds. At the time, I forced myself to accept it, but it seemed suspicious to me. After getting permission from Ali's husband, I searched through Ali's belongings and found the Mother-Child Health Handbook. Looking through it, I discovered that Ali had fudged the baby's weeks. Why had Ali done such a thing? When tracing back the actual timing of her pregnancy, it turned out that her husband had been on a long business trip for about 2 months during the relevant period. In other words, it was impossible for him to be the father. Realizing she was pregnant with her lover's child, Ali thought she could deceive him by about a month, but the baby ended up being unexpectedly big. That's how I became suspicious. At that point, the lover, revealed as the child's father, began apologizing profusely to his wife, banging his head on the floor as he knelt. However, his wife coldly said, "From now on, you'll live by your own means," and slapped the divorce papers down right there. She kicked the groveling man away and walked off, her departure marked by a clear, refreshing resolve. Meanwhile, Ali's husband wasn't silent either. "Of course, I'm divorcing you. Go be with that man." "No. I just liked his face. He has no money." "So, you were with me for the money, huh?" Ali choked on her words as her husband hit the nail on the head. "Sky was just a tool to extract money from you, right? Don't spout nonsense. I heard yesterday's phone call, thanks to Mary. I had recorded it to ensure Ali couldn't deny her words if anything happened." Ali's husband, who had been silently listening to our conversation, had a face red with rage and deep furrows between his brows. Confronted with this shocking truth, Ali's body seemed to tremble slightly. But then, as if remembering something, she peeked at her smartphone screen. "If Sky is okay, then it's all good, right? And hey, even if the blood isn't the same, I gave birth to him, so he's essentially your child." Both Ali's husband and I involuntarily exclaimed, "What?" at her absurd and selfish justification. Thinking she had dodged the issue, Ali put her hands on her hips, looking smug. With that, her husband said just one thing, "This is over," and abruptly hung up the phone. "What are you going to do now? I did everything you told me to, right? Didn't you like it?" She tried calling her husband from her own phone, but he had blocked her number and she couldn't get through. "By the way, Ali, did you know that leaving Sky in a tote bag and going out could be considered a crime?" She shook her head vehemently, and when I showed her what kind of crime it could be on my smartphone screen, she shuddered and collapsed right there. "Ali, it's goodbye from us too. Farewell." With nothing left to say, I walked away with a cold gaze, but I felt a chill down my spine. Turning around, I saw Ali with bloodshot eyes and twitching eyebrows, making a terrifying face. "I'll tell my brother. It's your fault this happened because you moved without telling me." "It was my husband who decided to move, feeling sorry for me being exploited by you. And he knows all about this situation too. He said he never wants to meet you again." Realizing she was abandoned by her brother, whom she thought was her only ally, Ali cried out loudly right there. Despite all this talk, not a single word of concern for Sky. How selfish can she be? "This is no time for tears. Go pick up Sky now. If I'm getting divorced, I don't need the baby." How can you say that? Unforgivable. I will never forget what you just said. Sky will never go back to you, no matter what. I bid farewell to such a despicable sister-in-law, resolving at that moment to take a certain action. Afterwards, I reported to the police about Ali leaving the baby behind. Although Sky was quickly taken into care, the act was deemed far too cruel, and Ali was thoroughly interrogated by the police. Having been told she would be divorced by her husband and disowned by her own family, Ali found herself completely alone. She was sued for damages by both her husband and her lover's wife, demanding $30,000 each from her, and she ended up taking out a loan with the lover to pay these settlements. Unfortunately, the loan came from a shady company, and she ended up working in a grim place to pay it back. My resolve was to raise Sky as my own child. When I told this to my husband, he warmly accepted the idea. Oh, that reminds me, I forgot to mention that I'm also expecting a new life. I will nurture these children carefully, ensuring they live freely and grow up well.